We're so excited to have Mr. Edwards here with us. I'm really excited, especially with you having just judged over at European Championships. Like, what an honor that we now get your insight. And we're looking forward to talking about the horsemanship and equitation. So I'll let you take it away.
Okay. Let's see. So my background, I'm an AQHA, AQHA, NSBA Category 1 judge. I hold other cards, do a lot of ranch stuff. I do a lot of ranch clinics. I started in the horse business as a packer, actually, in 1980, and went out on my own training horses in 1987 after working for Frank Evans and Marilyn Mowry at Oasis Quarter Horses. I tried to get a job with Gary Roberts, and he didn't need anybody. So then I decided to go out on my own. So anyway, that's my background. I started judging. My first judge's card in 1989 was an NSBA card, and I've probably have judged 500 shows since then, at least. I was doing 35 to 40 open shows a year for 3 years in a row before I got my AQHA card. And then I think in 2009, I got my paint card. So.
That's amazing. And I'm so sorry for everyone. I didn't end up editing this slide, but we are going to talk about all of these things and even more today. So anyway, we'll let you go ahead and get right into the bulk of it.
All right. In horsemanship, correct pattern is a must. And like it says, precision, smoothness, subtle aids. We are looking for, and I like what you put there, which is the rider and the horse must look like one unit. So there's got to be a connection between the rider and the horse. And when we say that, one thing that we don't talk enough about, in my opinion, is would be the rein length. I think is super important. We see something and so you can't really have a connection if you have a big drape in your reins. Okay, and the big drape in the reins is something that we still see, usually not at a bigger show, but a lot of these horses come out of the Western Pleasure to do the horsemanship, and some horses you can't take a hold of their face or you can't have that connection. You have to teach a horse to have that connection, and so we still see loose reins. I do quite a bit, I think, and so you need to have a proper rein length to have the correct connection between you and your horse. A relaxed, natural head and neck, not behind the vertical. That's a good one because we still see some of that too. And just to somebody tries to get a connection, and then we call it, as a judge or a trainer, I call it the horse is buried in the bridle. Okay, meaning that they're behind the vertical and their head's down and behind the vertical. And you're probably, when that happens in a horsemanship, it's going to probably inhibit their forward motion, inhibit some of their the movement in their gait, especially the lope, actually, I think. So, which we want to see a good moving, all of that is part of your being correct, is going forward, having the connection, but also having good movement with your horse. So.
And could I maybe just have you elaborate? So when you think of like, what's a good horsemanship pattern, like what are you hoping to see when you go out to judge?
I'm hoping to see that the pattern. So before we judge, as judges, we go over the pattern. And here's something I when I was at UC Davis the other day that you don't see. And it struck me. It's interesting. I thought it was really good. So I was doing, it was a scrimmage. And so basically they're riding against themselves, riding their horses, and they wanted feedback. So I scored them and gave them feedback. But what I thought was interesting before we started is the whole team went out there, and you probably know, Chris, that the NCEA patterns are pretty elaborate. They're more elaborate really than what we typically see at, they're almost on par or more like a world show pattern, really. but so the UC Davis team went out and they walked that pattern, all of them. And which I think is we were talking earlier about pattern placement and how important pattern placement is. And you know what, having a mental picture in your brain of how that pattern should be laid out in that arena. And a lot of patterns don't have cones. They have a start cone only. Okay. So you need to lay that pattern out. So you kind of need to be thinking a little bit about what the judge is thinking about, because we want to see it how it looks on the paper, so you don't incur any placement penalties, meaning you did the maneuver way off of where we thought it was, so you're going to incur a 5-point penalty. So all of that, I mean, you can lose points on a poorly laid out pattern, meaning it will come out of your maneuver score even if you don't incur a penalty. So
thank you. That's perfect. We can go on to the next one.
Does that answer?
Yes. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So the pattern has to be posted 1 hour before, must include a walk, jog, lope, back, and then the optional maneuvers, which could be rollbacks or side pass, counter canter, depending on the level. Some of the harder things we won't see in a level 1 pattern. Okay. But like usually we don't have a counter canter in a level 1 pattern. So anyway, you want to walk through. I think walking through the pattern's awesome, and knowing, I go over with my people before they show, like, where are you going to stop? Where are you going to do your turn? Where do you pick up your lead, or where do you transition from, let's say, a walk to your trot to an extended trot, things like that. So as a judge, we want to see exactly how it's drawn on paper. That's how we want you to write it. So this is an example of a rollback. This is a reining rollback, but it's still a rollback. There we go. So a rollback is over the haunches, moving the shoulders. One place we would see problems in a rollback, is in the scrimmage that I judged the other day. They had one. A lot of the horses they use in collegiate are X-reiners. Okay, and we had one that both people rode the horse on a pretty tight rein, which was fine. They got through all the pattern except there was a rollback in this pattern, and guess what happened? The horse got stuck, backs like 4 steps, and rolls back. So in that case, in NC, they only go +1.5 to -1.5 instead of +3 to -3. But that's a plus or a -1 or a -1.5 on that rollback. I think if they had, because what they did is they stopped and then they went to roll back. They could have moved their hand forward. They could have asked that horse to take a step forward, and they might have got the rollback. Obviously, the horse locked its shoulders. So if your horse doesn't do a rollback is a forward motion. You have to have forward motion, and you have to make sure that your horses loosen their shoulders, that they don't lock their shoulders. And sometimes if you have too tight a rein, they lock their shoulders, and you're not going to get your rollback. So.
And could you maybe explain what's the difference between a pivot and a rollback? Like, how do I understand, okay, well, when is it a pivot? When is it a rollback? And how do I show you that correct rollback?
Let's see. Well, rollback is much more forward motion. It's a stop, turning on, and I think actually this is a good example. The video that you picked of a reiner doing a rollback, that's a good example of a rollback because the amount of forward motion that he has, you can see the horse sitting on its haunches, shoulders coming around. I think he uses the fence a little bit to help the horse do that, which is a good training method for anybody that's trying to teach their horse a rollback. That's how I was taught, we always took the cow horses and turned them into the fence, and that's how we teach them to do a rollback. A pivot is it's still a forward motion thing, but they're not gonna sit on their haunches as much. They're going to hold a pivot foot more, and they're also going to their body isn't going to be as their body gets kind of bent in a rollback through the head and neck. Okay, you're not going to have that in a pivot. So I think that's probably the difference. You can still do a pivot with some speed. So
yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Now I've got a counter canter example for you.
So a counter canter, this is a pretty hard. The good thing we don't see it in our level one, because this is one of the harder maneuvers I think they do, and having control of a horse's body, and usually it's on a circle, like he's loping a circle here, and a counter canter is really, really tough. Okay. Your horse, this isn't something they typically want to do. You could see that he's got the haunches to the outside because he's on a left lead. Okay. And he's got a little bit of arc through its body, but if you don't keep that hind end, that horse is going to swap out. Okay. And so he's really keeping a lot of inside leg to keep that counter canter, which is, again, we had a counter canter at the scrimmage the other day, and we had a horse that swapped out. And that, and I told the person, you just didn't have enough leg to keep that hip. And because a horse naturally wants to be on the correct lead usually. So anyway, you counter canter is something you do need to practice, and probably quite a bit to be proficient at having a horse that can have the proper bend, stay engaged, stay in the bridle, and have a good counter canter. So let's see, overall presentation. Poise is a big thing. If you go out there and you look like you're scared to death, not going to be good. Usually not going to be good. So you need to look confident. You're going to be confident if you have gone through this pattern in your head. You've walked in the arena before the show started. You know where you're going to do all your maneuvers. That's going to help your poise and your confidence. Attire, neat, clean. Do you need the bling? I mean, here's a funny, I have to bring this up, Kristen, and I'll tell you why, because I've judged for such a long time, and I am not a fashionista, and I'm not trying to be, but I do, a lot of my lady friends who are judges that will be done judging, and they're like, did you see that outfit? And I'm like, what? I didn't see. So you do want to be neat and clean. A lot of it's funny how judges actually, we all have our different, like one judge will say, oh my God, they need to shape that hat. That's another thing. I mean, I can kind of tell if you sat on your hat, I'm going to notice that. But otherwise, and if it's dirty, I might notice too. But I am, if it's neat and clean and you look tidy, that's pretty good for me. I think the overall look, the better you look, and the more confident you look also is absolutely a plus. So let's see, rider position, seat alignment, ear, shoulder, hip, heel line. You need to have that straight line. I am going to refer to something that I saw you put on Facebook, Krista, which I told my customers, I told the customer, you need to go watch your video. And it was when you were talking about having your seat contact and rotating your hips. And I thought that was so good. actually. That was so spot on, because we see a lot of people, I feel like that they have that big arch in their back, okay? And so their back isn't loose. And though a lot of times those are the ones that at a lope on a rough horse, they're going to lose their seat, right? They lose that contact with every stride. And by rotating the hips, like you said, I thought that was really, really a good thing. So
I'll give you your tip after this.
Yeah, I thought that was really, anyway. And a secure seat from your, I call it from the leg down, but inner thigh, knee closed. A lot of times, like in collegiate, they want you to do notes, and I will just put LL, and that's lower leg for me. Okay, so you could tell when somebody's got a weak lower leg, so they don't have their weight in their heel. The weight is more on the ball of their foot, which is not proper. Their legs right out in front of them a little bit, especially at the lope. Okay, they have a good time they're pretty. A lot of people are pretty good at holding it at the walk and the jog, but they lose it when they start loping, and their legs will drift forward on them. So having a really good lower leg, I think, is having them too far forward or too far back. Usually, it's too far forward, I would say, most of the time. But anyway, so your seat alignment, your lower leg. Having a loose back, keeping your seat on the saddle, because your seat is an aid in horsemanship, just like your legs and your hands, and you lose communication if you lose your seat. So rider position, and I'm trying to look at this, but let's see, we had the one in the middle. Okay, so we're talking about being out of alignment. She's sitting back, her legs are forward, her shoulders are slouched a little bit. She's not sitting up through her upper body. What more do you want me to talk about that?
No, look, whatever you want. I just thought I'd give some visuals to maybe speak to some of the things that we talked about. Maybe just like, do you see a lot of these issues when you're out judging? Like, what are kind of the common positioning errors that you would hope that we could all avoid?
Probably lower leg. I mean, even when that's probably lower leg is the biggest thing. The second biggest thing is having too big of an arch, and it's okay to have an arch in your back, like let's say number 3. Okay, but if you start losing your seat at the lope, that can be because of what you talked about rotating your hips back a little bit, which makes your back flatter, correct? And so anyway, if you can keep your seat and you have a little bit of arch in your back, I'm fine with that, as long as you can keep your seat that way. So that doesn't offend me that much, but I do point it out because a lot of times people are trying to sit up so straight and they tighten their stomach and everything, and so they get that arch in their back, but then that's going to throw them forward out of the seat when they're loping. So
is one of the biggest positioning things you watch for just movement then? Like if you're saying movement in that lower leg, are you like,
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Movement. A good example is that, like, in the scrimmage that I did the other day, I had one. I think I could have marked her higher. I probably marked her a 74. And usually that's the range at intercollegiate. We're a really good one's a 70, because remember, we're only going to +1.5 for one. And so a 74 is pretty good. And she I think was, she beat everybody else by like 1.5 points, which doesn't sound like a lot. That's a lot. And she was excellent. And so there was, I think she was, like I said, I probably was a little low on her. I plus halved every maneuver. And I think there was, what, 8 or 9 maneuvers. So I think I plus half everything. She could have easily been +1 on a couple of the things. She was just solid. So very solid lower leg, really good. I call that's your foundation, that lower leg, right? And then her seat never left that saddle. There was never one time where there was any, where you could see any kind of daylight. Okay. And her head, her arm, upper body position was, I mean, everything was perfect. So, and I think we'll see, I think the person at the end of this that we have on video, that was the world champion, I think she kind of exemplifies what that is. Okay. So.
Absolutely. And you can speak to the upper body and hands a little, if that's okay.
Yes. No magnets. I've seen people with Velcro, okay, here, Velcro on their sleeve and the side of their shirt, and they Velcroed their arms there. Don't do that. But having your rein length is important, but also your hand and that's an extension of the rein all the way up to your elbow. Okay. So, from the elbow to your horse's mouth is going to be, the rein. So part of your arm becomes part of the rein, really. So that is important having, and then your offhand, should be aligned. They should be the same. So your offhand would be the same position, with your elbows in, and shoulders back, looking up. You can turn your head slightly in circles or to see where you're going. You don't want to look down. Your eyes got to stay up, chin up. Like the one picture I did mention, I thought the person is a little bit slouching through their shoulders and things like that. Let's see. And no pumping the free hand. And we talked about contact. Having proper rein length is so, 2 inches can make a pretty big difference in the look. You really, that's one thing I know when I help people is I get their rein length just right before they go in. One thing you can do is you can take black electrical tape and put them, you see people do that, or put a mark on your reins so that you know what your proper rein length is. So you get it before every time. You don't have to worry about it. You can, if there's some way that you can know right where to put your hand on those reins before you go in. So head and eyes. So head up, eyes up. You can look straight ahead and we can look down. Our eyes can look down without the judge being able to tell that you're looking down. That you do not want to bend your head down. Okay. You do not want to do that through your neck. You can, we can see people, anytime your head goes like that, it's probably not, that's not a good thing. Okay. When we're judging. So we want to see your eyes up and also having your eyes up shows confidence too. So, and we were talking about poise and confidence. So it also relates to that. So, all right. Pattern performance. Oh.
That was my bad. It just skipped like 19 slides. There you go.
So, I think this has to do, you, pass reverse to the inside of the arena. So this would be when we're working them on the rail.
Which that's only for quarter horse, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So after your pattern, they can call and bring you back in on the rail. Just want to clarify.
So in a big class, we usually, let's say in a multi-judged, we'll go through like, I've had 40 horse classes, and there was 3 of us, and we brought back 13 horses, which is pretty good, which means we all have the same top 9 or so. Usually it's at the bottom end where we mix it up a little bit, but out of 40 horses, we brought back 13, and work them on the rail. So, and so the rail work can, if I have horses that are within a point of each other, the rail work can make a difference. Okay. So we can use the rail work to move a horse up or down. So it's very important that even if you had a good pattern, that you have good rail work and you keep that good position that you had during your pattern, meaning your lower leg, your seat, your head up, your everything. And you have to ride that from the time we bring you back into the arena until we dismiss you. So that's important. It just because you got through the pattern and you get called back to the rail, it's not done yet. So because any ties are broken on the rail, or even if, let's say, you miss a lead and you're like 2 points lower than somebody else. I mean, the rail work, that missing a lead on the rail, that would probably, it would probably drop you below that person that is 2 points lower than you. So let's see. Accuracy first, then speed, very important. We talked about walking the pattern. That is part of your accuracy. Writing the pattern for the judge, just like the judge sees it drawn, because we actually go through that in our head before we start the class. And being accurate is very important. Your speed, when you first start showing horsemanship, you should just focus on the accuracy. The speed will come. Don't expect it the first few times that you show in horsemanship. The better the connection, usually, the more the speed somebody will have. So again, being really in tune with your horse, just like it says, brisk, willing horse with minimal cues. So the person that's going to place the highest in the class is going to have cues that almost are, you're not going to be able to see them. They're imperceptible. Okay. And again, let's talk about so it says transitions, but also correct cadence, because like a horse at 4 beats, okay, at the lope, it's hard for me to be very positive in a horsemanship pattern on a horse that somebody lets it 4 beat, because that is not a correct cadence. Okay. So, and it would be the same at the jog, not having too fast a jog when it says not to extend, but just a regular jog, or a horse that walks too fast when it should just be a regular walk, things like that. So you have to have the correct cadence, smooth transitions. Again, your transitions, you don't want to be poking your horse visibly, okay? like a lot of the your horse doesn't want to jog off and there you are, your legs are flailing on his side. That's not credit earning in horsemanship. So what else do you want me to say about that? Is that good?
No, that was perfect. And then if you just want to talk over Addie's pattern here a little bit and kind of explain like what makes a pattern like this a world champion run. Now, obviously, keep in mind, like nobody's expecting anyone at a local show to look like a world champion run, but I think it can be helpful to set a goal in our mind.
Absolutely. And I think that it really, you have to know what a good one looks like for you, and for you to imitate that when you show, I think that's, yeah. And it's good. Watch people that are doing good when you're at shows. Okay, if you're trying to learn or you're trying to get into this, watch the people that are successful and imitate them. So right away when she walked off, picked up that lead, you couldn't eat, there was no perceptible cue. What we notice right away is the connection that she has with her horse. Look how her horse steers. Her hand is right in the middle. The connection is very apparent between her and the horse, how the horse collects there for her. She barely moved her hand. Great lead change. Again, hardly can tell the cue. She's not, this horse looks to me, he's got a lot of drive from behind. He doesn't look to be the smoothest loper, right? You can tell that he kind of pushes you up a little bit. He's a good mover though. And there she is pushing him on at an extended trot, or an extended jog, I guess I should say, but nice stop. Great turn. And when you notice she hardly moves her hand, see her hand is still dead center. And the connection is apparent in the speed of the turn. She didn't have to hardly do anything to back that horse up. I keep talking about connection, but this is a great, great example of what we're looking for when we're talking about connection with a horse. And she does an excellent job. She never loses her position of her body, her upper or lower, her legs. Everything is really, really good throughout the entire thing. Her hat's up, her head's up. She's looking where she's going. Counter canter, which is a very difficult. And you can see he's got some drive from behind. You can see he's wanting to try to push her out of that saddle, and she keeps a very good connection. Every transition is just about flawless, I think. And this is a lot of pattern. So I thought that was really, really good. And I think that's a great example of what we're looking for. And
so then I was hoping here with this slide, if you could maybe speak to some of these maneuvers that we're going to see on pattern, like circles, stops, pivots, rollbacks, like what would make one more credit earning than the other? Why is one circle credit earning when one is a -1/2 kind of a thing?
Precision. So again, laying out your pattern and having a good example. And I don't know if we talk about this. I'm looking at the slide here. Let's throw in one that square turns. I think square turns are a really, really good thing. And what we see in square turns is people that round them. Okay. And you should do, in my opinion, let's say whether it's through a trot or a lope, you should be able to do a square turn in 2 strides. Okay. I mean, that's quite, so you're talking about a 90-degree change of direction. It should look square, not rounded. Okay. Again, I use that because I think that's a better example, but circles, they need to be correct. They need to be the correct size of what it looks like on the paper. Okay. And the speed. Okay. If it's just a lope, it should be a lope. If it's extended, if it says to do a fast circle, then obviously you're going to have more forward motion or more speed. Your stops should be straight, square, smooth, again, with minimal hand movement. And I bring that up because I think if we go back to what we just watched her go, if you just sit there and watch her hand, she hardly moves her hand. So everything's coming from her seat and her legs as far as cueing that horse and the connection between her and the horse. Pivots, rollbacks should be continuous with no backing, like we talked about earlier, where, you know, you get stuck doing a rollback and your horse takes 4 steps backwards or something. Side pass, leg yield, 2-track, you should have correct body arc, which we saw, like we talked about the arc in the counter canter, and we even saw it on our slide where she just had a counter canter in that pattern, and lead changes, exact stride count, meaning simultaneous, and not, you know, dragging a lead or a non-simultaneous change, or even like a lot of horses will maybe change in back first and then behind for a stride, so they're a delayed change of leads by 1 stride, really. And the lead changes should be smooth. Let's talk about a simple lead change real quick, since we're talking about lead changes. A simple lead change is, and I just judged a show this weekend, and this is a good thing to talk about, is, so a simple lead change is done through a walk or a trot for 1 to 3 strides, okay? If it goes on beyond that, then you're going to incur an out of lead penalty. And let's talk about loping up there, people, so a simple lead change is not loping up there and stopping and then changing leads. It's what I just said, and the rule book states this, is that a simple lead change is through a walk and a trot by 1 to 3 strides. So. Anything else that we could do about on that, or?
Sorry, I think we lost Maddie. Hang on. It's okay. I can launch our slides here. I think we had a connection issue. Oh, she's back. It's okay. Sometimes we have technical difficulties, you know.
Yeah.
Hello.
We've got her back. Anyway, should we do a quick check-in? How's everybody doing? What are you thinking watching some of those patterns? Is anything standing out to you guys? Anyone? Anyone? No one wants to humor me.
Mhm.
Never. Nope, they're all quiet today. Sorry, Jim. Just you and me. Anyway, okay. We'll take you on to your next slide here. Anna says she needs to work on her lower leg. Ah. Very good. All right. Well, Jim, can you talk us through some of the common exhibitor mistakes you see? I wrote down a few examples, but what are the things that you're going, oh, you could clean this up?
Let's see. Well, leaning into turns. Again, let's go back to the video we watched, the very good video where she had a pivot each direction, and you can't see really. She's using her lower leg to turn her horse. Other than that, there is no perceptible cue, in my opinion, which makes that so credit earning. Okay. And so like those turns, you know, were probably like a +3 turn, I think. Let's see, I'm trying to read my over cueing while pulling and kicking, which is something we just talked about, like the horse that doesn't want to jog off, or the horse that doesn't want to lope off, and has a big delay, and you have to start flailing your legs. That's obvious. That's one of the biggest mistakes we see. Sitting stiffly, I think that's a good one, because if your lower back is too loose at the lope, which we talked about, it's gonna pop you out of the saddle, and you don't want to lose contact with your seat. Okay. And crooked backing is another one we see quite often. Okay. And remember, when you back, you should, it's backing is again forward motion. So if you have a horse that doesn't go forward, it probably doesn't back that well either. And if you have one that backs crooked, the way you fix that is you can back down a fence. So if they want to go to the left, you're going to back up with their left side against the fence. So they can't do it. Make sure you use your feet. A lot of times a horse might back a direction and you don't have your leg on him, and your leg should help that horse to keep its hind quarters and go straight back. So
can I ask, some of the girls in the chat all made comments about struggling with their lower leg. Do you have any more training type advice on how they can improve their lower leg for the future?
Well, I know, and I think I've seen you do this, is riding with no stirrups, right? I know that's something that you do, and that is a good, I mean, gosh, I've been doing this a long time, and I think back, and that's what back in the 80s, that's what everybody did was, in fact, you would get lunged on a horse and you had no reins, no nothing, and they're lunging that horse and you had to keep your heels down at your lower leg and keep your balance. Sometimes they even did it bareback, right? I mean, so I think I'll tell you what I always tell people. I help somebody get their leg in the proper position, and then I say, does that hurt? and they're usually like, well, that's not comfortable. I say, then it's correct. And that's really true for somebody that is having problems with their lower leg. So if you have somebody that on the ground can say, okay, this is where your leg needs to be, now push your heel down and everything, and now hold that, okay, now go ride like that, and if you make somebody do that for 15 or 20 minutes and they're not used to doing that or having the muscle elasticity to do that, they're going to be sore, okay, when they get off their horse. So if eventually when you get it, it feels more natural, but it's probably if you're having problems with it, if it feels unnatural, then you're probably doing it correctly, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. Sounds like we're doing No Saddle November, everyone. Oh, very good. So next we have some videos for you of more local show type runs for the horsemanship. So if you can speak a little bit to what you see on these, and if you want us to pause at any moment or replay them, just let us know.
Okay. Well, she has a pretty good upper body, from what I can see. It's a little far away, the camera. I don't really care for her lower leg.
I'm noticing a theme.
And like I said, it's kind of hard for me to see, but right there when they're going away, okay. So when twice we've seen her go straight away from us, to me, that's where her lower leg stuck out to me more, okay? Because did you see, let's see if we see it again. There's a pretty big gap between her horse and her leg. Does that make sense? So when she's going straight away from us, from the camera, to me, I felt like there's a lot of daylight there in the calf and down to her. See right there? You could see it for a moment right there with that right leg when she was coming around. I thought there was a lot of daylight as where I would like to see a little more contact with their horse's sides. It looks like her leg is riding out in front of her, to me also. And so to stuff like that, when I'm judging, is a little bit, it jumps out at me, I guess. So right here, you'll see the daylight right there. Do you see the daylight? Especially that right leg when and we only see it for about 2 strides before she turns, but I felt like, so she is kind of bracing in her stirrups, okay? And pushing her legs out, okay? because she's trying to, rather than having the weight in the bottom of her heel coming down through, she has the weight on the ball of her foot and pushing her stirrups out and pushing her legs off her horse, which then you can't have as good a connection. You're not going to have as good a control if your legs aren't on your horse, in my opinion. So
that's great. And we've got one more for you.
and this one's even harder for me to see. I would have to blow that up. It's too hard for me to see it, so it's not zoomed in enough.
I can tell you, at least from where I am, I noticed the horse is out of cadence at the lope, and it
Mhm.
doesn't look like she has a very tight rein contact. And then her free hand kind of swings up towards her body, almost like she's riding trail instead of being even for horsemanship.
Right. Yeah, it's so far away, but I'm on my phone, so it's teeny tiny.
Okay, we can do it by braille. You all get to hear from me instead. Yeah, the main thing I notice is she's losing control as she goes to the top of her circle, which from what I can see, though her leg is fairly connected, there's a lot of upper body issues and lack of connection through the reins. So then he's not steering nicely through that top of the circle.
Yeah, there is a big lack of connection through the reins. I agree. That I could see that at the end, and and you can see it in his head, and it's fine to have his nose out, but when his head comes up and he's bobbing a little bit and things like that, she doesn't have the horse in the bridle, so she's lacking a connection right there, and which is that's going to show up in your collection, which you were talking about, cadence and at the lope. So again, it would be the horse could be a little better in the face, and so a little bit of that. Some of that would be improved by her training on the horse. Also, I guess would be a good way of putting it. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, perfect. So now we get to talk about the equitation. What can you tell us? What is this class? What's the point? What are we doing here?
Well, some of the things are similar. So we're looking for body position, lower leg. We're writing a pattern like we did in the horsemanship. So you should be able to perform the tasks correctly in a timely manner. You still need to keep your eyes up. So in diagonals, people have a hard time getting their diagonals. I mean, we see that all the time judging. So there's a lot of penalty 3s and penalty 5s for either looking or picking up the wrong diagonal for 2 strides or less, or 5 points for picking up more than 2 strides before you get the correct diagonal, or a DQ for never getting the correct diagonal. So if it says right diagonal and you never get it, that's going to be a disqualification. So that is probably in the hunt seat equitation. I would have to say looking and diagonals are probably the biggest thing that we still see and penalize in the hunt seat equitation. Let's see, I'm trying to read what we have here. The class builds a foundation for over fences, which is true. So you still need in the hunt seat equitation, I like to see a horse that's going forward. Okay. And just because of what that statement says, it's a foundation for going over fences. The horses need to go forward. And probably another place that we see problems I would have to say, is going to a 2-point. Okay. So somebody might go to a 2-point and they don't have enough forward. and it looks kind of dumb to be loping and 2-pointing instead of actually, okay, 2-point would be an extended canter, okay, and instead they're actually loping, because a lot of these horses do the Western and the English, right? So, but your horse needs to be going forward to do a proper 2-point. And let's see, pole level with or slightly above the withers, not behind the vertical, and cadence and balance, and that all goes, cadence and balance goes along with having a connection. Again, we still want to see a connection with the horse and rider. The really good ones, the people that score in the upper 80s to 90, you know, in the hunt seat equitation, I mean, that's a good run. If you're scoring a 90, that's a pretty good run. And it's going to be similar to what we saw in the horsemanship video, that type of connection, that type of forward. So let's see. Yeah, pattern posted 1 hour before. We're going to have walk, trot, canter back. Cadence and speed should match in the rail work. We're going to have maybe a turn on the forehand. We could have, I think sometimes we have half passes or, you know, things like that in a hunt seat equitation pattern. But again, it's all about lower leg and having it's interesting because some of the flaws that we saw in the horsemanship that I pointed out, like seeing daylight between their legs, something like that, that becomes more glaring in hunt seat equitation. You don't have as much, okay, you don't have a fender down there, you don't have a stirrup. I mean, it's very obvious because you just have a leather and an iron. So let's see, rider position influences everything. Let's see, it says judges never asked to mount or dismount, which we don't. So another thing, let's see, in position, when you walk up to that cone, you better have your body position from the get-go, okay? Some people walk up to the cone and they're waiting for the horse in front of them, and they're not, you know, they haven't gotten their position yet. You need to have that position before you ever walk up to that cone, because that's the first thing the judge sees, okay? And let's see what else.
No, that's okay. We can go to the next one if you're ready.
Ear, shoulder, we talked about that. Straight line from elbow to bit, so it's not any different than even if you're riding one hand in horsemanship. It's the same thing. It basically from the elbow to the horse's mouth should be that that part of your arm becomes part of the rein, really, and it should look like one. Light, steady contact. So in hunt seat equitation, you're going to have even a little bit more contact than you would in horsemanship. Okay, we still, you know, in horsemanship, we still want to see a little bit of contact, but in the hunt seat equitation, you should have. I don't like draped reins, and we still see that. We still see sometimes in the hunt seat equitation, people come in with a draped rein, and that's not credit earning. Okay. Let's see, upper body and leg position. So again, eyes up, shoulders back, confidence, balance, shoulder square, subtle weight shifts, no leaning in the corners. Again, you're going to sit straight up like you do in horsemanship. You're going to have your legs straight underneath you. You're going to be have your heels lower than your toes. And I like what you have here. It says heels down, calf on horse. So that's what I was talking about in the horsemanship when we looked at that video where I saw a lot of daylight. She didn't have her calf on her horse, and your calves, even in horsemanship, should be on your horse. So and it's very, like I said, it becomes more apparent when you're writing English. And the iron should be on the ball of your foot, and no strings, can't tie you on. And again, we walk, sitting trot. We'll have a posting trot with the correct diagonals, circles, figure eights, halt, back, side pass, serpentine, turns on the haunches, turns on the forehand, leg yield, leg changes, hand gallop. And again, let's talk about hand gallop, because a lot of these horses that, I see a lot of them that just, it's not a good hand gallop. I don't care how good your position is if your horse is just loping. Okay, you got to be going forward. Okay, you probably
clarify. Is there a version of too fast though? Because I think hand gallop at local showing here means something very different than it means to us.
Yeah, it should be controlled. It should still be controlled, absolutely. But think about if you're in a 2-point, I guess think about a working hunter, or going towards a fence or something like that. That should be what a 2-point should be. If you're cantering a circle, and then let's say you do a small slow, and then they want you in a 2-point in a bigger circle, then there needs to be a good change of, adequate change of speed between your canter and when you do a 2-point. Okay, so the reason we 2-point is because we're going more forward, and it's would be like riding to a fence. So transition gates and transitions, again, we don't want to see these horses that come in and canter and they're forebeating. You got to have forward motion. Posting trot, everything should be even a little more forward on an English horse. Okay, so your posting trot would you rise and fall with the leg on the wall, and your upper body you should be looking ahead. Let's see, it's a sitting trot and canter slightly forward. Let's see.
Yeah, I just pulled these little snippets from the rule book on what it says about positioning of the rider through the gates and transitions, but you already spoke to a lot of this, to be honest, so we can head on through.
Okay, yeah, and we talked about 2-point, because that's the biggest thing we see, 2-point.
Absolutely. So. And diagonals, which you mentioned.
Yes, diagonals are huge.
Yep. Very good. Okay, so we've got a world champion run here for you.
So she had great position from the time she walked up to the cone, good backup, very good upper body, very good lower body, change diagonals.
Posting with no stirrups, huh?
Sitting trot. And that's a nice forward trot. She doesn't lose any position through her body. So this is similar to, and since this is, like you said, a world champion run, that's why it's similar to the horsemanship, is she's having a very good run. You can't see, that was a good lead change. And we have a counter canter. Notice that she never gets any air between her seat and her saddle. Okay, she's stuck to that saddle. She's so with the motion of the horse. Okay, nice 2-point. We could see a change in speed, meaning she's going more forward. Her head slightly turned, looking where she's going. Her shoulders stay square. Never loses her lower leg in any part of this pattern. Extending the trot down.
And that was a 2-point with no stirrups. I just want to point out for everyone.
Okay. I couldn't even see her drop the stirrups, but
That first posting trot in with was no stirrups, and then the 2-point out was also no stirrups.
Yeah, and you can't even see her lose her stirrups because her lower leg is so good. So
Absolutely. Perfect. I think we've got some extra detail on the lateral movements here.
okay, turns on the forehand, turns on the haunches. So a turn on the forehand, let's say a turn on the forehand right is moving the hip to the left. A leg yield is going forward and laterally at the same time. I guess coming from more of a Western background myself, I call that a 2-track, which it is kind of a 2-track, but it's going forward and going laterally at the same time, which I used to do a lot of that in training my hunt seat horses because it gets them to lengthen their shoulder out, especially at the trot. If you trot and you can do a leg yield, it really loosens their shoulders up and you get a much better reach in an English horse. So lead changes, simpler flying again, smooth, on stride, with cues that you can't even see. You can do unless it states that you have to do a flying in a pattern, it's always either or, simpler flying. So
That's great. And then we just have an example of a turn on the forehand here. Just if you could speak a little bit to what makes a forehand turn incorrect versus correct.
okay, yeah. So you're moving the haunches around the front end. The front end stays stationary. So it's exactly the opposite of a pivot. Okay. Which that was a good turn on the forehand. So let's see, judging common errors. We want to reward the horse that is consistent and the person. That's why I commented like through that video of how you could not see anything change, even though she went through that pattern. There was nothing that changed in her lower leg, her upper body, her hand. I mean, everything was just right on. I mean, it's your typical deductions are usually for upper body faults, or like a 2-point, or could be uneven reins. It could be too loose a reins. Okay, so we talked about that a little bit. Too loose a reins. Looking down for leads or diagonals, that's a pretty common penalty that we see a lot. Missing diagonals, and rail work. Again, we would do rail work and have that's where we would, if we have to change, I don't want to say have to change, if we have ties, where we may move people around a little bit compared to their, so basically, if somebody, unless you do something pretty bad on the rail, if it's not going to change your placing much, but a wrong lead or a wrong diagonal could drop you down. I mean, that's a deduction, and it would be the same as like missing a diagonal. Let's say you miss your diagonal on going into it on the rail. So in the pattern, that's a 3-point penalty. You could deduct 3 points from their pattern score. Okay. So then that may drop you below somebody else that was below you. So just to give you an example of that, you want to make sure that your rail work is consistent with how your pattern work was. So.
Perfect. So here's another more local level show where we can talk to her hunt seat equitation pattern.
That was a poor transition to start the pattern, and a poor lope. Talk about cadence. Same thing there. Gets a little better when he moves forward more. she's a little perched, I would say, meaning that she's kind of coming out of the saddle, losing her seat a little bit at that. From what I can see, her lower leg seems to be pretty good. And I'm guessing that was a turn on the forehand.
Yeah, turn on the forehand, and it looked like he stepped forward out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that would probably be like a maneuver score -1 on, on the turn of the forehand. So her lower leg seemed good. Her transitions to start the pattern weren't very good. And so that as a judge, your barometer goes up and down. That's why I say it's so important that when you walk up to that cone, you're ready to go, because a lot of times you want to set the tone for the judge. It's like, oh, I like this one. This is pretty good, And if you're not good from the beginning, then our barometer goes down a little bit, and it's hard to get back up, even though most judges judge. I am happy to say, when I started judging, a lot of people are like, well, you're always looking for the negative. Well, you know what? That's not true. We're the biggest cheerleaders for every person that walks to that cone. Okay. Sometimes we'll have somebody having a really good go, and then they incur a major penalty. And I know when I'm in Germany, we were sitting pretty far apart, but we all went, oh. You could hear all four judges like, oh man, it was devastating, because you had somebody that was going to really be up there. You had somebody that was going to be in your top 3 until they incurred a major penalty because they were having a good go. So really, we aren't looking for the negative. We're looking for the positive all the time. And so if you can have a ride and have your ride be positive from the get-go, that is really credit earning to the judges. So let's see, what else can I say about that?
No, that was perfect. I think we have one more example, and let me know if you can see it okay. And then I think that's all for hunt seat equitation.
We just have to find it.
Yeah, it looks like we lost Maddie. That's all right. It was our last video. No stress. I know.
Oh, there's Maddie.
I'm tired.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's no big deal. Well, is everyone still with us? Are you learning anything? If you don't want to turn your mic on, just put something in the chat and we'll chat about it real quick. But that's about all we have. So hopefully you guys have learned something today.
Questions? Do they have any questions for me? Because I'd be more than happy to answer.
Here, we'll let you play on this last one while they start putting their messages in the chat.
So when she transitioned down there, she got a little loose through her body, I thought. So she lost some of the contact she had with her horse. It looks like I'm having a hard time, but I want to say it looked like her heels could be down more, that her lower leg is kind of weak, and she's balancing off of her irons. And you can see her leg right there, how she threw her leg way back to get the horse to turn. The same there. She actually, it almost looks like, I would say that she needs to adjust the length of her irons. They look, I don't think they're the right length for her personally. But like she's almost riding a little long, maybe. And because of how she's using her leg, you know, her upper body was okay. But the biggest, most glaring thing to me, like through all those maneuvers, because it's like, even if you do the maneuver good, if like where her leg, how, like what we saw, the faults in her lower leg, I mean, that's, I can't get too positive when I'm scoring somebody like that. Does that make sense? Because even if the horse does the maneuver, she's lacking the control in her lower leg and everything, and which is incorrect. So she's not correct. So, and what else? Tell me what you noticed about that.
Oh, okay. Mic's on. What did everybody notice? I'll start picking names if someone doesn't volunteer.
I'll let it run in the background for you guys too, so you can keep seeing.
Perfect. Someone.
I don't know if it was mentioned, but the slack in the reins.
Yeah, I didn't see that. It's hard for me to see, but I see it now. Yeah, she has, and the horse is responding pretty right there. You can see him stick his nose out. Okay, so yeah, he should be. She should have just probably only take up a couple inches, just slightly more contact with his face. I agree, absolutely. And like her legs were good there. It's more when she, like this, you see her leg right there, her left leg. That, for me, that's not credit earning at all. And I'm not saying you can't use your leg, but she had her heel up, all her weight's on the ball of her foot in that iron as she's trying to use her leg to get that horse to turn. So.
Oh, we've got a message in the chat. The reins stuck out to me instantly too. I feel like they are at a disadvantage right away as the ground doesn't seem ideal, but in general, it looks a little janky. Yeah, there's nothing that makes you say, wow, on this pattern, right? Like I know I certainly notice a lot of movement through her seat. Like she just looks very unstable, but I think I feel like what you said is so correct. I think if her stirrups went up 2 or 3 holes, I bet her whole ride would change. Right. And I do agree with the rein length too. Okay. So all of that just and so let's put a score to that ride. Let's like off the top of my head, I didn't write anything down, but I'm probably thinking 67. Something like that, 68 range, probably, because of some of the minor faults. I mean, there's nothing that was really bad about it, but anyway. Yeah, absolutely. There's no credit in that one. Well, we'll go into some like general Q&A time, but I have your parting thought here for us. Do you want to give us some context? What's the story behind this quote? Oh, well, it has to do with I think commitment is a good thing, and how and I know how committed you are, and I applaud you for that.
But I think that's horse trainers work so hard, and I know, Krista, that you know a friend of mine, David Busick, and I always say to David, how much are you making today? Oh, 5 cents an hour. It's what David says, and that was kind of our running joke for a long time. So between David and I, but I think that's where. Do you want me to mention the story behind this quote?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
So, there was a horse, and I loved this horse from the time it came out of the NRHA sale last year. His name's Daytona 500, and I think the girl that rides him, Shannon Quinlan Hill, I think is her name, and she just won the Congress in the 3-year-old futurity for the ranch riding, and she just had her appendix out like 3 days ago. Okay, and her husband was worried. I think this was an emergency appendectomy, and she was in the hospital. And when he knew she was okay, he jumped in the truck. He drove to the Congress. She flew there, and after having this major surgery, and it wasn't 3 or 4 days later, and she won the futurity on Daytona 500, which I think is, and that takes such a lot of commitment. And in that quote is, if you got to be at your grandma's for Thanksgiving, then maybe you shouldn't be a horse trainer. and I thought that was, I mean, that kind of sums it up. So and congratulations to her, and that's the kind of commitment it takes in anything that we do with horses. And so even if you're not a horse trainer, things don't come quickly, but they will come, especially if you put the effort and the time into it. So.
Well, that's very well said, as it all was. We'll take us to our reminders slide now. And I just want to thank you so much for giving us your time and offering some education for us. I have a winner for our giveaway quickly. And Derek, actually, it's all you. So I have a signature Stitchworks hat for you, and I have a Horse IQ sticker. So I'll get those to you. And additionally, our last e-show of the year is going to be in October. So once I get a judge booked, I'll get those dates out to you. Mr. Edwards, we might have a chat after this. Sorry. and that's your last chance for points. So if you're going for the buckle or one of the year-end awards, make sure you get your last set of points at that show. And then if you haven't seen already, our year-end awards banquet is going to be at Gnostic, and I believe in November, but Sorsha or Maddie might be better at confirming. Yeah, November. So very good. Thank you all. And is everyone comfortable? Why don't we turn some mics on? And even if you don't have a question, if you do have a question, awesome. But just let Mr. Edwards know what you thought today. What stood out to you? What did you notice? Anyone?
I just wanted to say thank you so much. That was so well explained that there's just been a few light bulb moments when I was just listening to that. As Krista would know, there's a lot of issues that you mentioned that I have. And it was just so well explained. I actually learned loads. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I'm glad that was great for you. Sorsha actually put a comment here in for you. You were saying most of us have all-around horses, but is the ideal to have 2 different horses for eck and horsemanship? Is movement different in eck and horsemanship horse? That's actually a very good question. But like, if it was a perfect world, would you say an equitation horse is different than horsemanship horse?
Not necessarily. Let's go back and think about the horsemanship horse that we saw in the video, the world champion. I would guess that you could put an English saddle on that horse and he would be equally as good in the hunt seat equitation, would be my opinion. Okay. So, so that he looked kind of tall. for a horsemanship horse, but he was a great mover. He's so responsive, and I think he could do either one. So I guess to that, a lot of people do have two separate horses, okay, to do both of those events, but it is not necessary. And you know, if I think and a lot of people have, I think where you were going with that would be people that are very into the horsemanship, their horses don't necessarily do, let's say, Western pleasure. Okay, they do horsemanship. They may do trail. Okay, and horsemanship. A really highly trained Western pleasure horse, in my opinion, doesn't. There's a difference between that horse and an all-around horse, and those Western pleasure horses that just do Western pleasure don't always transform into being a good horsemanship horse. So does that, I guess, does that answer it? I don't know.
Well, yeah, because I know that the movement's sort of profoundly different from Western pleasure to the likes of equitation and horsemanship. It was just, you know, I mean, if you can differentiate between classes like that, is there a further split between horsemanship and equitation was kind of the thing? So the answer is no, that the same horse can be doing both.
Absolutely, the same horse can do both, in my opinion. Where we see problems is a highly trained Western pleasure horse trying to do horsemanship, and those horses that are, let's say, winning the Western pleasure, and I mean a really highly, you know, at a high level, it's so hard. I mean, so much training's gone in to get that horse to just to do that they don't have necessarily, they don't even have the mind to be able to ride a horsemanship pattern. Okay. Without getting, a lot of them will like if you have to stop and back up, they get stuck in the backup, things like that. You know, or they don't turn, and they're used to going on such a loose rein that some of those horses don't make that transition into being a horsemanship horse. I think an all-arounder is meaning, you know, an all-arounder doesn't necessarily win the pleasure, okay, but it knocks in there pretty good. And that there's a difference between winning the pleasure and being third, fourth, or fifth, in my opinion. So, those horses, I think, make some of it has to do with mind, some of it has to do with movement, and some of it has to do with training. All three of those. So,
let me know if you agree, Jim. But I was going to add, I think maybe a helpful clarification is like, it would be very typical to see a hunter under saddle horse is a hunter under saddle horse, and it may not necessarily cross into equitation. On like your rail class horses tend to be different, whereas it would be very common that a horse that excels in horsemanship would also excel in equitation, because if it can expand the stride well for the horsemanship, it very likely can also expand the stride for the equitation. Is that fair? Would you agree with that, Jim?
Yes, and also I think a good example would be Western riding. So a Western riding horse can make a really good horsemanship horse also. They can do both of those things very well, and they have a little bit. The thing is that a really highly trained Western pleasure horse gets they just don't have the forward, and they get stuck trying to do a horsemanship pattern sometimes. So, but anyway, that's hopefully that answers the question. But there are a lot of horses that can do, I think, can even do the horsemanship and the hunt seat equitation and do them equally well. So, and I thought the one that we probably let's go in reverse. The one that was the world champion in the hunt seat eq probably wouldn't be, it's a little more forward horse than, and probably didn't quite have as high a degree of training as the horsemanship horse. So I think the horsemanship horse that we saw, that was the world champion, could probably do the hunt seat equitation. I'm not sure that the hunt seat equitation would be such a good transition over to horsemanship for the hunt seat eq horse. Does that make sense? Just because of movement and the degree of training, I think. So, and some of it has to do with their mind.
Yeah, understood.
Well, very good. Who haven't we heard from? Priscilla, Emily, Derek, did you guys have anything you wanted to add before we wrap up here?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to say it was really great webinar. It was really nice to hear from you. And there's definitely things that stood out to me, and I'm gonna think about that and take that home for riding next time.
And I hope.
Hi, Chris. That's very informative again to see this the horsemanship and the hunt seat similarities there. I think that's something that could sit well over here, and particularly if we can appeal to the mainstream riders to look at this as well. Maybe one question I would have is when would you say a horse is overcanted in the lope? I mean, this is an issue I find when I'm looking at a pleasure class in particular, but also in the horsemanship and in Western riding, when you're looking behind the horse, you say, "Oh God, that doesn't look good."
So the rule of thumb. I'll tell you what the rule of thumb is with being overcanted. So if you're in a left lead, that right hind foot ideally should land in the middle of the two front feet. Okay.
All right.
So if it's canted. You're on a left lead, it's canted to the left. That right hind should be landing in the middle of the two front feet. That right hind is outside of, or I guess it wouldn't be outside, be inside of the left front leg, which is your lead leg on the left lead. That's overcanted.
Yeah. Okay. That's one of the things I always wanted to figure out. That was the true definition of it, really.
So and do we still see that? Yeah, we still see that. And how bad do you penalize it? Well, if you have somebody that's overcanted and the horse still isn't moving very well, then you're going to penalize it more than, let's say, the horse that is a great loper and he's overcanted. Does that make sense? I mean, it's all relative. Just because they're overcanted, you wouldn't. Even though that's not correct, you have to also look at the positive. We tend to dwell on the negative, and that's one thing that I even talked about this last weekend when I did a clinic. Is somebody, everybody, the one thing we all see is something negative, but how does that go into scoring? Well, let's say that you overcant your horse and you lope off in a horsemanship pattern, but then that horse, you overcanted it to step into the lead, but then it's going pretty straight after that. And it's a very cadent, the rider's really good. So let's say that was let's not count the loping off. Let's say, okay, after the loping off, it was a +2 maneuver. And the lope off was a -0.5. So what are you going to do? You're going to give that horse a +1.5 maneuver. Okay.
So, yeah.
Sergeant Brady has your personal effects. Yes, you did.
Yeah, that's good. No, that clarifies it for me anyway.
You take the good, you take the positive and the negative, and you that all goes into every maneuver score that we do. So when we're judging. So.
All right, everyone. Well, if that's all we have for today, thank you all so much for participating. And I'll see you guys all at the next one next month. Thank you so much again, Judge Edwards, for humoring us and coming and educating us. It was really, really well done. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
All right.